Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:06. Thanks for tuning in here. It's a good Wednesday morning, and man, we are loaded for bear. I don't know how we're going to fit it in all 4 hours. We better get right to it. But first, let me tell you who's going to join us a little later at 6:35. Cal Thomas will be here. 7:05, our buddy John Solomon over at Just the News about a story we're going to hit on in just mere moments. What was behind Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony before the January 6th committee. 8:05, the great Matt Schlapp from American Conservative Union. And then at 8:35, Julie Kelly also has something to say about Liz Cheney's behind-the-scenes dealing with Cassidy Hutchinson and Julie Gunlock's best friend, Alyssa Farah. Alyssa, good morning, Julie. How are you?
Good morning. Doing well.
I saw this story roll out yesterday, and I
too.
think, all right, Liz Cheney, Cassidy Hutchinson, Alyssa Farah.
We're going to have some fun.
We're just going to let Julie handle this from here because I know there are some of your favorite people here because they're the real
Not
Republican
surprised.
women in town, right,
yeah,
Julie?
Yeah, right. The respectable ones. Not at all surprised by this, Larry. Just sickening.
You'll remember Cassidy Hutchinson. Listen, she's the former staffer for Mark Meadows, right? When Mark Meadows was chief of staff at the White House, right in the final months of the Trump administration. She was a staffer for him.
She was an executive assistant.
Okay.
I mean, no,
she fetched lattes for everyone.
Exactly. I want to be clear here. She was not a policy staffer. She wasn't part of the sort of domestic policy staff. She wasn't doing hardcore policy
That is
work.
a very important distinction in
important.
Washington, D.C., and she's presented as though she was, the chief of staff's right-hand man.
No, exactly.
She then became a star witness for the January 6th committee. Now, understand, she was a loyal staffer right up until, and it appeared even after January 6th. I don't think she was one of the ones who quit in a huff or anything, like your buddy Alyssa Farah.
Right. No. But don't forget, after Alyssa Farah, when Alyssa Farah did leave the White House, she was recorded in a video saying, "This has been the honor of my life."
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Until she was offered a CNN contract and then an
the
ABC News contract. Yeah. And all of a sudden there were all these stories about how she was just... And the same seems to have happened with Cassidy Hutchinson. She had already given some testimony and some firsthand accounts about what she witnessed on January 6th. But then something happened. Something happened where she then became a star witness on one of the primetime January 6th committee hearings where she claimed that Donald Trump leapt from the back seat of his armored vehicle and tried to wrestle the steering wheel away from a Secret Service agent who was driving the vehicle to force him to go to the Capitol building. Now, the January 6th committee and the American people only heard that testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson. She became a cause celeb. She was all over the place. She wrote a book. She was celebrated. She made her money. She was probably hoping to get a contract like her buddy Alyssa got.
That's right.
What the American people didn't hear and what the January 6th committee did not present to the American people is what we learned a year later when Republicans got the majority and Congressman Loudermilk of Georgia became the chairman of a special select subcommittee to look into January 6th, that there were contemporaneous accounts from Secret Service agents, the people who were actually there. By the way, Cassidy Hutchinson wasn't there.
No. She heard this
Third hand.
Someone told someone kind of thing.
Right. But the actual witnesses who were there said that never happened. And anyone with a brain in their head knew that it never happened. Here's Cassidy Hutchinson in her big primetime debut. She looked lovely, by the way. I mean, she was styled. They made her look exquisite for the cameras.
Let's not go overboard.
Well, no, because she's the perfect witness to appeal to exactly who they wanted to appeal to. Because she was everyone's daughter or daughter-in-law or wife, and that's who they're appealing to.
Or I overheard the president say something to the effect of, I don't effing care that they have weapons. They're not here to hurt me. Take the effing mags away. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol from here. Let the people in. Take the effing mags away.
Just to be clear, Ms. Hutchinson, is it your understanding that the president wanted to take the mags away and said that the armed individuals were not there to hurt him?
That's a fair assessment.
And there was more.
But again, she's saying, is it your assessment when she never heard it?
Right.
The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel."
That's impossible. All right. So I remind you of all of that about Cassidy Hutchinson because, of course, the Kamala Harris campaign and the media, they're making January 6th the number one issue for this election now in the final 2+ weeks because that's all they've got.
Yeah.
And so imagine our surprise with the revelation yesterday, the release of multiple signal and text message screenshots that shows ongoing discussion and what appears to be negotiations between the aforementioned Cassidy Hutchinson and Liz Cheney, the chairwoman of the ranking member, we're told, of the January 6th committee, although she really did all of the work. She was in constant contact with Cassidy Hutchinson, working out private conversations, which, by the way, through Liz Cheney's own admission in these text messages, was borderline unethical, considering Cassidy Hutchinson had lawyers at the time and had representation.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to talk directly to a witness
Right.
like that. Alyssa Farah also got involved with this and was sort of greasing the wheels to make sure that Cassidy got in good with Liz Cheney and was spotlighted. So she was running interference and talking to Liz Cheney and then going back to Cassidy Hutchinson. We'll read these text messages to you, but here's the timeline of events. Alyssa Farah puts Cassidy Hutchinson in contact with Liz Cheney. They have these, off-the-record conversations. We only see a little bit of it in text messages. They weren't that dumb. Then they had conversations. We can see that they were trying to schedule a time to have a conversation. Then afterwards, Alyssa Farah says, listen, Liz Cheney was really impressed by you, really wants to, highlight your testimony, but she's worried that you have lawyers because it would be unethical to continue conversations. Next time, your lawyer should be in the room. Next thing we know, Cassidy Hutchinson fires her lawyers. She hires lawyers recommended by Liz Cheney, the chairwoman of the committee. Those lawyers agree to work for her pro bono. And the next thing you know, her testimony gets much more colorful and much more vivid and much more prime time. And then she's there on television telling that story that, of course, was completely false.
And don't forget what Liz Cheney and the other people on that committee did. I mean, they had a Hollywood director.
Yes.
They had a prime time slot for a live interview. I don't know. Was it her testimony that was on that prime time nighttime?
Oh, yeah. She was under the bright lights
but it was the primetime show. And that, again, was directed by a Hollywood director. They really managed this. They really wanted this to be the thing that took him down. So there you go.
Yep. And again, she was the perfect witness. She's unimpeachable. If you start to attack her or start to challenge her, oh, you're mean to women again. There you are, beating up on this poor girl who just is trying to tell the truth. As John Solomon's write-up over at Just the News points out, Liz Cheney is a licensed attorney in D.C. She knows the rules about this sort of thing. Congressman Loudermilk emphasizes that Liz Cheney would have known the ethical and legal issues with this communication. Clearly, Cheney did not want Stefan Passantino representing Hutchinson, and shortly after Cheney and Hutchinson began communicating, Cheney convinced Hutchinson to fire Passantino and arranged for a new attorney to represent Hutchinson pro bono. By the way, I know from my own context, in fact, I believe we'll have Matt Schlapp on a little later in the program, I think. I remember Matt Schlapp coming out publicly saying that Cassidy Hutchinson had reached out to CPAC and reached out to other conservative organizations asking them to pay for her after January, like immediately after January 6th, saying, hey, I'm going to need lawyers because, they're going after everybody in the White House. This was, by the way, the plight of a lot of people who worked for the administration. I know somebody who worked for OMB, who was a lawyer for OMB, whose life was made a living hell by Liz Cheney's committee. He had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars in lawyers' fees. There were a lot of people who could not afford representation. They were desperate, and Cassidy Hutchinson was one of them. And Liz Cheney, it appears,
offered to help,
saw an opening to help her out and alleviate some of that pressure. There's more about this story, and we'll read you these text messages. And listen, do I want to spend my time talking about January 6th? Absolutely not. No one cares about January 6th except Kamala Harris and Tim Walz.
And Liz Cheney.
And CNN.
Right.
And ABC News and MSNBC. That's what they would. So if they're going to force this issue on us, we have facts, and we're going to share them with you so you can use them as well to push back, because that's what's needed. We're gone are the days where we just look at the ceiling And we say, oh, we're not going to stoop to that level. You're not going to distract us. No. You want to talk about this? All right, we're going to talk about this. It's 5:15.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
From the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Some of these are young women who worked on the Trump campaign. Some worked in the Trump White House. Some who worked in offices on Capitol Hill. All who knew immediately that what happened that day must never happen again. America had the chance to meet one of these young women yesterday, Miss Cassidy Hutchinson. Her superiors, men many years older, a number of them are hiding behind executive privilege, anonymity, and intimidation.
You see the narrative that was created there. These young women, all these young women, Hill staffers, White House staffers.
Brave.
Young women, while the men older than them are hiding behind immunity and
Brave
executive
young
privilege.
Suffragettes.
Yeah. That's the narrative that they wanted. That's the narrative they created because it's a great TV show. And, oh, by the way, very politically valuable, isn't it, for people like Liz Cheney.
That's right.
Who appealed to female voters. It didn't work out in the end for Liz Cheney.
No, it didn't.
Unless she becomes Secretary of Defense under Kamala Harris.
Very likely.
Here's some of the text messages. This one's off of Signal. Signal, if you don't know, is a messaging app that's encrypted. People who work in the government all get a Signal account. I've learned this.
I didn't know that, really.
Oh, you didn't know that?
I mean, I have a Signal account, but I didn't know it was automatic.
I didn't get Signal until friends of mine ended up working at the White House during the Trump administration. And I would, I'd text them and then they'd call me and say, hey, download Signal.
Yeah,
because it's encrypted and people can't, tap into it. And all right, so here's the exchange with Liz Cheney. Hi, this is Cassidy Hutchinson.
You're gonna do the
I'm sorry for reaching out this way, but I was hoping to have a private conversation with you soon, if you're willing. Liz Cheney replies, I'd be happy to. Let me know what time works for you. I'm free all day for a call or in person, whichever you prefer. I really, really appreciate this. Then it shows a missed call at 12:13 on June 6th, and then a attempt to call back. Give me a call when it's good for you. Is now okay? Can we aim for one? That works. I'm sorry I missed you. Please call when you have a moment. I'm worried to initiate the call in case you're tied up with something. So clearly there's conversations going on with Cassidy Hutchinson and the rather robust-sounding Liz Cheney. I just needed to differentiate between the two.
And Cassidy is definitely showing deference.
Of course. My gosh, I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Chance,
Now you see a text message exchange with Alyssa Farah. Now, again, Alyssa Farah is a woman who worked in Pence's office. And her dad runs very, very right-wing conservative websites. World News Daily. We used to call it. We used to refer to it as World Nut Daily.
Yeah, it's a little nutty.
Only half the stuff you can. He actually, strangely, was a champion of the birther movement.
Oh, yeah.
Back during the Obama administration. Right. That's Alyssa's dad. So there's issues there.
Yeah, Alyssa's got some issues.
Alyssa now is the conservative on The View.
Right.
So all right.
Yes. So do your fingers, do the Chris Plant.
Conservative. Yeah, and Alyssa Farah was able to champion and make a multi-million-dollar career out of being a former Trump White House staffer who now it's just a shock to her conscience that she was participated in what happened there. So this is the roadmap.
She has done nothing on The View to in any way represent or defend the conservative positions on issues. Nothing.
And this is the career roadmap that is clearly laid out for Cassidy Hutchinson. And her buddy Alyssa is going to help her the way.
Right.
All right, so here's the text exchange with Alyssa Farah. Cassidy, I know you're busy, but is there a chance you've touched base with anyone regarding what we talked about Tuesday night? Alyssa replies, hey, yes. So I reached out to Liz. Liz. She agreed to keep our convo totally confidential. She said she admires you and could tell that you wanted to do the right thing with your testimony. Yeah, what does that mean?
Right.
The right thing.
The right thing, yeah.
Her one concern was so long as you have counsel, she can't really ethically talk to you without him. But what she suggests is a follow-up with you, with your lawyer, that Dan George can lead, probably can do without other members. And Tim, so no other House members will be there.
Right.
Yeah. Does that help at all? I can tell she really wants to work with you. Just trying to figure out the right way to do it. And then Cassidy replies and says, I mean, do you think this is actually of interest to her at this point, or is it moot? It looks like they've moved beyond it. And Alyssa Fair says, it's very much of interest. She's basically just wants to structure it in a way where you're comfortable and wants to make sure it's clear if you speak to them again. It's them asking, not you, so you don't get in trouble. Fascinating, isn't it?
Yes.
As these texts exchange. And then it goes on about how, the committee is involved and about how the lawyers are involved. All right, so fast forward to the article. There's a lot of, and I don't want to read all the text exchanges here unless something jumps out at you that we should include here. But in the article, it says, Hutchinson then fired Passantino, her lawyer, hired Cheney's recommended attorneys who agreed to represent Hutchinson pro bono. Within a few weeks, Cheney brought Hutchinson in for a secretive fourth transcribed interview. Understand, she's had 3 interviews up until now with her old lawyers.
Yep.
Now she's got the new Cheney arranged free lawyers. She comes in for a 4th interview. And during this 4th transcribed interview, only Cheney and one other committee counsel were present, in addition to Hutchinson's new counsel. And during this interview, Hutchinson testified to her most outlandish new claims.
There you go.
With no other witnesses in the room except Cheney, one other lawyer from the committee, and the lawyers representing Cassidy Hutchinson now that Liz Cheney had arranged.
This is just sickening.
It stinks to high heaven. And we knew it did at the time. And we've got Julie Kelly on to talk about that at 8:35. And we've got John Solomon, who's been covering this, coming up at 7:05.
Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
It's 5:36. Thanks for riding a shotgun with us this Wednesday morning. I have a couple of different versions of thanks for joining us, but it's just gets tiresome saying thanks for joining us. So
mixing it up a little.
You gotta.
Yeah.
Thanks for riding shotgun. Coming up at 7:05. No, 6:35 first, Cal Thomas. 7:05, John Solomon, Just the News. 8:05, Matt Schlapp from CPAC. And then 8:35, Julie Kelly on the J6 Revelations. That's all coming up. It's Julie Gunlock riding shotgun.
Oh, dear. Good morning.
It'd be Larry O'Connor. So the question has to be asked, and I want to give a hat tip to Stephen Miller, who's a great media analyst, and we'd love to have Stephen on the show. This isn't Stephen Miller, the guy who runs America First Legal,
right.
Who used to work in the White House and was demonized by liberals and Democrats, which tells you he's very smart and effective at what he does. No, it's a different Stephen Miller.
It's a writer.
Stephen Miller is a writer, columnist. He's really a media analyst. He sleeps in the mornings. I've asked him to come on the show multiple times. Oh yeah, and he's also in Mountain Time.
Oh,
he's based out of the Denver area, so it's not going to. So that way, I can talk about him and sort of steal his ideas, and he'll never know.
Never know.
Right.
Great.
So his article is a good one at The Spectator. It says, will Kamala commit to certifying a Trump win? This is a very legitimate issue that needs to be discussed, and she should be asked. In fact, Brett Baer, looking for a question for tonight's interview? Let's start with that.
This is a great question.
The vice president is constitutionally bound as the president of the Senate to preside over the Electoral College proceedings. Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris, in that role, will make history. She'll either be a vice president who, for the first time since George Herbert Walker Bush, and before that, I think since John Adams, she will be certifying her own election as president of the United States, or she will have to do what Al Gore did in 2001 and humbly accept the results of her opponent's victory. Now, in that case, it was a bitter pill for Al Gore to swallow because, of course, you'll remember the fights over Florida when Democrats, back when election denial was cool, and they were denying the results of the 2000 election, and they claimed the Supreme Court stole it by preventing a legitimate recount, even though every single recount done after the fact showed that George W. Bush did, in fact, win Florida, thus winning the Electoral College. But Al Gore was forced to swallow his pride and gavel in the results of the Electoral College, which gave the presidency to George W. Bush. Will Kamala Harris do the same thing for Donald Trump? This needs to be asked. She needs to go on the record right now, because look at the facts. First of all, she repeatedly says that he is not qualified to be president of the United States. She has repeatedly said that if he wins, that's the end of free and fair elections in this country forever. Right. She is now saying that he has threatened to turn the military on his political opponents in this country, which is a dastardly lie. But beyond that, she's campaigned shoulder to shoulder with Liz Cheney, who has consistently said that he's disqualified from office. She's Jamie Raskin, who will be sitting there in the House of Representatives that day on January 6, 2025. Jamie Raskin has said that he will invoke the 14th Amendment and refuse to seat Donald Trump if he wins. He's already gone on the record in an interview saying that. She's also hired Mark Elias. Mark Elias is the election lawyer who has been paid by Democrats for the last several decades to change election rules in certain states.
He's an incredibly dangerous man.
He helped through his law firm peddle the Steele dossier.
He's the architect of a lot of what the Democrats trying to harm Trump in that first.
Right, through lawfare and through various things, and specifically when it comes to elections. And he championed the cause of barring Donald Trump from ballots this time around. You know, the Colorado actions and the Michigan. He financed all of that.
And the way in which they're in panic mode, you've got to think that they're already planning something.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Oh, of course.
With Mark Elias involved in this, they're up to no good.
Of course, Mark Elias is now on Kamala Harris's legal team, and he is on the record of using every possible legal means at his disposal to keep Donald Trump from even being on the ballot, let alone being the president of the United States.
And now with where we are with the polling and the panic we see on the Democrat side, you have to think that they are at some point going to sort of, okay, move on. We're probably going to lose this. Now we got to figure out, what do we do if Trump actually wins?
So Stephen Miller writes in The Spectator, should Trump win the election, we are sure to see a push from the Democratic Party and its allies in the media not to seat Donald Trump for a second and final term, invoking the insurrection clause of the 14th Amendment. This is what Jamie Raskin has promised to do.
Raskin said it on record.
This would cause a constitutional crisis, the likes of which the country has never seen, and would likely involve the Supreme Court, which the media and Democrats have targeted repeatedly in the past. Yes, they're calling they've already set up the narrative that the Supreme Court is an illegitimate institution.
That's right.
That it needs, so-called reforms, which includes basically turning the Supreme Court inside out. People think that has to do with abortion, or it has to do with, changing voting right, and it has to do with a lot of those things. But it also has to do with setting the narrative preemptively that they're going to be involved in this determination whether Trump can legitimately claim the White House should he win the election, which the Democrats are going to try to keep.
And we know, unless you've been asleep this entire time, we know the media will back them. Will give them cover. Will say this is legitimate.
Oh, of course.
They will have panels and panels and panels of legal analysts saying, no, this is fine. This is this is
the process. This is the way the founders intended.
Yes. So the American public will be misled into believing, some of them, not smart conservatives, but some of them not our listeners, but there will be a segment of the American public who will believe that this is okay.
Just like in 2001 and in 2017, election denial will be cool again.
Yes.
And the cool kids will be doing it. Summing up here with Stephen Miller's column, if Trump represents the unique threat to democracy the left continues to claim, if they truly believe he is another Hitler in waiting, a dictator from day one, to what lengths would they go to keep him out of office? And considering the fact that Kamala Harris constitutionally is the one who will preside over the final discussion, final count, and final validation of the Electoral College on January 6, 2025, this seems like a no-brainer to discuss right now. Let's get everyone on the record now, 3 weeks out, about how they'll conduct themselves after the election. It seems like it's fair game to ask Donald Trump and J.D. Vance if they will accept the results of the election. Why is it not asked of Kamala Harris?
They ask every single Republican that comes on those shows. It's time to ask the Democrats.
Great writing, Stephen Miller.
Yes.
Well done. When you wake up, I'm sure someone will tweet at you. It's 5:43.
Miss anything? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Get today's breaking news on the Vince Colonnese Show, weekdays 3 to 6, right here on WMAL.
What I can say is I cannot comment on this directly because it is an active investigation. As you know, that the Department of Justice is currently moving forward with, so I'm going to be really careful. What I can say is every Afghan national who entered the U.S. was screened and vetted by intelligence, law enforcement, counterterrorism professionals, and with every new information that emerges, if that individual could pose a threat to public safety, we take immediate action, and we take that action.
We are not in safe and secure hands there. She can't even get through the sentence that she's reading. That's Karine Jean-Pierre, the spokesperson for the White House. But that was right after the news that the FBI had arrested an Afghan refugee who came here in the aftermath of Joe Biden's disastrous pullout of that nation. It was arrested for an ISIS-linked terror attack against American citizens scheduled for Election Day. Karine Jean-Pierre, as you just heard it, every Afghan national entering the U.S. was screened and vetted by intelligence, law enforcement, and counterterrorism professionals. That, of course, echoing exactly what Jen Psaki said at the time, because at the time we saw these plane loads of people just jammed into planes.
Yeah.
All they cared about was quantity over quality. They wanted to be able to say this was the single largest human airlift in human history, and it was a huge success.
Yes, and they wanted to change it from a mess to a humanitarian rescue effort, essentially.
Right. Well, here's the latest. Jackie Heinrich breaking this story. Biden-Harris administration now admits that an Afghan national accused of plotting an Election Day terror attack did not undergo certain vetting they previously claimed he passed. Nasser Ahmed Tawahidi was never vetted or approved by the State Department for Special Immigration Status, that's SIV, despite officials from other agencies claiming that he cleared that stringent process. Additionally, sources familiar with the investigation tell Fox that Nasser Ahmed Tawahidi was not well known to the U.S. government when the administration facilitated his departure to the U.S., despite his security role with the CIA in Afghanistan. Fox has learned Tawahidi was employed as a local guard outside the base perimeter, and he would not have been among the most thoroughly vetted U.S. partners. They lied. They lied. They were incompetent,
they do this all the time.
And they lied.
And she stands up there at that podium. She lies to the American public. And then weeks later, the truth comes out and no one's paying attention anymore.
Well, and again, by the way, they lied at the time, because at the time we saw what was happening. And people were standing up saying, what the hell are we doing? We don't know who these people are. These could be Taliban. These could be ISIS. They could be Al-Qaeda. We're just jamming them into the planes. We're bringing them in here. Yeah. People were raising red flags at the moment, and we were told we were racist if we raised that. How dare you? These are refugees. These are our friends. They need to be here.
You hear the Democrats constantly now saying, well, that was Trump's fault. That withdrawal was Trump's fault, because Trump was the one announced that we are getting out of Afghanistan. Trump wanted a slow, planned, organized withdrawal.
In fact,
he did not want a sudden withdrawal, and that is what led to this crazy influx of people coming in that were not vetted.
In May, Joe Biden gave a press conference about the plans to withdraw from Afghanistan. He was sworn in January. By May, he gave a press conference where he said, we have torn up Trump's plan. We are doing this our way.
Yep.
We're putting our own plan in place, because what Trump was going to do was a nightmare, because they had to redo everything. So he gave a press conference and answered questions about how they were going to do it, and it was all
different.
All Biden. And now they're coming back and saying, well, our hands were tied. We couldn't do anything different.
Such a lie.
Of course it is. Here's Fox's report on it yesterday.
There's a lot of pointing and tension involving different departments, the Department of Homeland Security, the State Department, the CIA, the Justice Department, and FBI. We know he worked as a security agent on behalf of the CIA in Afghanistan. He was vetted for that job. He was vetted when he came to the United States, but the level of vetting, Dana, is unclear. Was he radicalized before or after he came to the States? That's where the government blame game begins.
Yeah, but again, they came out when the story, first at the time, and then when the story came out about this arrest, they immediately, you just heard Karine Jean-Pierre, I played it for you, that he was thoroughly vetted. Do you want to hear the words again? Do we want to hear it again?
Justice is currently moving forward with, so I'm going to be really careful. What I can say is every Afghan national who entered the U.S. was screened and vetted by intelligence, law enforcement, counterterrorism professionals.
There you go. And now they're saying, well, not exactly. Not exactly.
Got it wrong.
By the way, as we're doing throwback audio, how about this? This terrorist who's been arrested for a terror attack was arrested on September 9th. Here was Donald Trump on September 8th.
The country has never been more unsafe. We have people pouring in through our southern border, which everyone's forgetting about right now because of the travesty of Afghanistan. And if you look at the people coming in by the hundreds, by the thousands, and these are not the people necessarily that wanted the protection.
Right.
These are people. So are they terrorists? How many terrorists are coming in? And
he was raising the issue the day before this man entered our country. It's 5:53.